Hey everybody, so even with my major computer and webcam issues, I am going to try and continue to do a few videos a week, and Games of the Week is definitely something I want to continue, especially now as we get into the home stretch of the season where there's so many important games going on, so many great games and great matchups every week. So let's get right into it for this week because there are a lot of games. I'm not going to go into too much detail about each one because there are a lot to get through. This is a huge week for mostly bubble playoff teams. This is a big week for them. So let's get right into it. We're starting here with Winnipeg versus Washington today, Sunday the 10th. That is a potential Stanley Cup final matchup. Obviously, we still have the whole playoffs to go and a long way to go before thinking about Stanley Cup final, but Washington is definitely a team in the East that could make it. Winnipeg's certainly a team in the West that could make it. So that's a really good matchup between two elite NHL teams. We also have Boston versus Pittsburgh tonight. That's a huge game for the Penguins, who are right there on the line as far as the playoffs are concerned. They, I believe, have a 2-point cushion now, but that's a huge game against the hottest team in the NHL in the Boston Bruins, who have won their last 2 games in the final minute of regulation, come from behind wins. And they've got points in 19 straight games, the Bruins have. They're 15-0-4 in their last 19 games. Obviously, a remarkable stretch for them. So that's a huge game for the Penguins against a very good opponent. And then lastly, Vegas versus Calgary. Again, 2 of the better teams in the Pacific Division out west. Could potentially be a second-round playoff series matchup preview. If Vegas were to... Well, actually, I guess if San Jose ends up winning the Pacific, then it would be a first-round matchup. It'd be Calgary and Vegas in the first round. If San Jose finishes second and Calgary wins, then Vegas, if they beat San Jose, would probably play Calgary, unless Calgary were to lose in the first round. But it's a potential playoff matchup in one of the first 2 rounds out west. 2 very good teams. Moving on to tomorrow, Monday the 11th, we have Tampa Bay versus Toronto. I don't think there's much more to say about that. Two very good teams in the Atlantic. Columbus versus the New York Islanders. The Islanders are fighting with Washington to win the Metro Division. Columbus is fighting for a wild card spot in their playoff lives, so a huge game there. And San Jose versus Minnesota. San Jose is fighting for the Pacific Division. Minnesota is fighting for their playoff lives in a wild card spot. So, obviously a huge game for both of those teams there. On to Tuesday the 12th, we have Boston versus Columbus. Bruins, I've talked about, their white-hot points in 19 straight. They're becoming one of the best teams in the NHL. Columbus fighting for their playoff lives, so that's a huge game for them. Also, Washington versus Pittsburgh. Obviously, there's the natural rivalry there. There's the Crosby versus Ovechkin. They meet in the playoffs every year. There's a chance they could meet in the playoffs again this year, depending on how the standings turn out. That's obviously just always a great matchup. San Jose versus Winnipeg, that's a potential Western Conference final right there. San Jose and Winnipeg could be the last 2 teams standing out west, and then they would play potentially to go to the Stanley Cup. But that's a little preview of that. Definitely, without a doubt, 2 of the best teams in the Western Conference. Nothing on the Wednesday the 13th, so we move on to Thursday the 14th. We have Boston versus Winnipeg. Really exciting game the last time these 2 teams met. A couple fights and just a really physical, nasty game. A lot of fun to watch. Went to overtime, I believe, if I remember correctly, and Winnipeg won it in overtime. Boston is a lot better now than they were back when they met the first time. And obviously 2 of the best teams in the league. Montreal versus the New York Islanders. Montreal is a team that kind of, really haven't played well lately, and now they're fighting for their playoff lives. They looked like a pretty secure playoff team 3 weeks ago. Now they are fighting for their lives. They're actually out of the playoffs if that season ended today. with their win yesterday, Columbus bumped Montreal out, and didn't seem too possible a few weeks ago. It seemed like Montreal was pretty well set where they were, and now that is not the case. And then Islanders obviously in a big fight with Washington for the Metro Division lead. So big game there. And then Dallas versus Minnesota. The two wild card teams in the Western Conference duke it out. Division rivals. That should be a really fun game. Nothing on Friday the 15th. So lastly, we have Saturday the 16th. We have Columbus versus Boston again. Already talked about that. Once they meet on the 12th. They meet again on the 16th. Everything still applies. Huge game, especially for Columbus. Calgary versus Winnipeg, potential conference final. Two of the best teams out west. Winnipeg looks like they're probably going to win the Central Division. Calgary certainly is in first place now and has a chance to win the Pacific Division. They both could go deep into the playoffs. That should be a really fun game between two great teams. Washington versus Tampa Bay. That was the Eastern Conference Final last season. Could potentially be the Eastern Conference Final again this season, depending on how the playoffs shake out. Just two really good teams. Should be a lot of fun to watch. And then lastly, Nashville versus San Jose. Two of the better teams out west. Again, potential conference final. It's certainly a possibility. So there are a lot of great games this week. Hope you guys get the chance to watch some of them. I know that I'll be watching as many of them as I can. It should be a whole lot of fun. And with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.